Hey Genevieve, how you doing? Okay, I've got the back. Thank you for including the front of your poster. Now, of course, all the comments that I had made regarding the front of the poster are all applicable. Now we jump to the back of the poster. I think one of the issues that I see with the back of the poster is that you've built your timeline. Let me just get that in the window. You've built your timeline based on something that theoretically is not permitted on the front of the poster. And what I mean is that the front of the poster has this illustration. It's just kind of standing alone. And remember, we indicated that we shouldn't use any standalone illustrations at all because all of the meaning should be created typographically, like you've done here. Right? So we talked about that in my critique for this piece. But basically, the problem is that you've taken an element that's not permitted on the front of the poster and you've used it to create the timeline on the back of your poster. Do you see what I'm saying? So that points to a lack of harmony between the front and the back of the poster. So in order to gain harmony, it would be great to take this two-sided poster and take elements that you've already established from the front of the poster to try to create a timeline for the back of the poster. Do you see what I'm saying? I understand that you've taken the leaves, and that's good. You've taken this part of foliage that you've incorporated into the typography, and you've used that. The problem with the leaves, though, on that timeline is that they're not the same as these leaves. Okay, so again, we have diminished harmony because the elements on the back of the poster are not the same as the elements that were introduced on the front of the poster. Okay, let's talk about typography. So let me just grab something real quick. I'm going to open up that document really quick. So I think that what we want to do is we want to take a look at the following. And I'm not going to go through each one, seeing that this was submitted pretty late. But what we can do is this. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and do it. Why not, right? So as we look at the typography itself, we see a few areas that need help. So you've got the justified type, and your typeset is pretty good. I mean, right now there's a couple of issues with your typeset. The issue of justifying type, the problem that we run into with justifying type is that we have one of two issues typically. One is that the letters just all kind of run together, as we can clearly see in this second to last line. The second is that there's extra spaces that create these kind of typographic visual rivers through. So when you justify type, the software has no choice but to either condense the type to fit the line or to expand the type. It's very, very difficult. Now, I do have some tips and tricks over there in the course announcements on how to set your justified paragraph. So what we're having here is this: you just get this type is becoming very condensed in some lines. Boy, I think the second to last line is a good, really good example of how this one too, the third line from the top is just, there's no space between the words and the tracking has just been kind of smushed. So you definitely want to adjust your justified paragraph. This paragraph looks like the typeface is a point or so smaller than this paragraph. So you want to definitely take a look at that. Typographic widow right there. You want to avoid that. Now, all of the letters should be set in old style numerals, unless you don't have old style numerals in the typeface you've chosen. Then you're going to want to use a reduction in scale. That's all covered in the tutorials within the course announcements. So what I'm going to be looking for really is if you keep justified, there's no rags to check, but I will check for rivers and unusually condensed lines of type. If no justification, if you're using left align rag right, I'll be checking for rags, but I will be looking for use of small caps in instances where that is appropriate. Small caps as opposed to all caps, use of old style numerals or reduce the scale of the numerals that you are using, correct use of M dash, N dash, and dash, correct use of italics, optimal character count per line of type, superscript, hanging punctuation, orphans and widows, along with the 18 rules of type that we had discussed in week 4 and week 4's discussion board. Okay, now as far as the layout goes, the layout itself is we have a lack of proximity here. So basically we have the viewer's not real sure where he needs to go. All right, so we're going to adjust the layout to assist the viewer. So right now the viewer knows they have to start here, right? Because that's where the drop cap is. But theoretically, we don't know if we need to go here or here. And the reason being is because the spaces between the paragraphs are very, very far together. So the viewer gets to the end of this paragraph and says, do I go here to continue or do I go over here to continue? I think that in this particular configuration, I would just reduce the space between these two paragraphs. Looks like we're a little bit out of alignment over here. Yeah, your paragraphs are out of alignment. The left alignment of the top paragraph is not aligned with the bottom paragraph. Let's check the other side. Looks like these ones are in alignment. Okay. So basically what we have here is this kind of layout where we've got a group of elements up here. Then we have a group of elements way over here in the corner. Then we have one right here. So we have to look here for information. And I'm exaggerating, right? But we look here, then we have to go look way over here. Then we have to look here. Then we have to go down here and span. Wouldn't it be easier to look at an image than just go all the way through the type? For that, my recommendation is to get this type closer together in proximity. So one of the things that you can do is assemble 4 paragraphs of type. 1, 2, 3, 4. Place his image up here, or some other alternative way to get these paragraphs to flow easier. I think that would be your answer: is 4 paragraphs straight across, image on top, timeline below. In the timeline itself, I think the image is taking up a lot of space. And the reason I say that is because you've got this huge frame. And so the image is taking up that much space, but the space for the entire thing is taken up. Boy, it's almost a quarter of the composition. And maybe not a quarter, but at least a fifth or 1/6 of the composition. So the point I'm trying to make is I think that that's taking up too much space. The timeline itself, and let's zoom in over here. The timeline itself, you don't want to put this type on the diagonal. It's too difficult to read. Plus, the way that you're asking the viewer to tilt their head to the right over here, then to come down to the next entry and tilt their head to the left, then come over to the next one, keep their head tilted to the left, then come over to the next one, same thing, then come over to the next one, tilt your head back to the right. You see what I'm saying? My recommendation is to keep that on a horizontal baseline. As far as the timeline itself goes, don't forget your old style numerals. But what you also want to do is you want to make sure that the date itself should hang. Okay, so the left margin right here that's where all the type should start. So the date should hang, and then your left margin should be established. So date, then your end dash, and then your left margin of type. Same thing here. Watch your little same thing here, right? So there's your date, there's your dash, then your left margin. So the date is separated, hanging in or outside the margin. You don't want any widows. We got some widows here. As I mentioned, we have one up here, but there's also a couple in the timeline as well. Okay. Also, watch your type scale. I think this type is really, really small, and you might consider introducing a second typeface, a sans serif, perhaps. Okay, all right. So I know I've given you a lot, but that's where I'd like to see this going. So at this point, if you have any questions, please let me know. All right, great. Thank you very much.